Get everybody over here and we'll call it to order. As Jim comes over, we will call to order the Wednesday, January 29th, 2025 Audit Committee meeting. Haley, do you want to go ahead with the roll call?
Mr. Warren?
Here.
Mr. Morrison?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Mr. Jay?
Here.
Ms. Russell?
All present. Commissioner Jay, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you. If you are able, please stand and face our flag with a proper salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business will be approving the minutes from our prior meeting. These were circulated in advance. Hope
Motion to
everybody's had a
approve.
chance to read.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call it to vote. All in favor? The motion passes. Item number 2 on the agenda is updates to the Audit Committee Charter. I'm going to ask Zach Fullerton of Internal Audit to discuss that. Just for some background, and Zach, keep me honest here, we have not revised this since 2018. Zach went through a process of comparing to other jurisdictions and best practices and has circulated a proposed edited version of the Audit Committee Charter to bring it into a little more contemporary standing. So.
Sure. Yeah, that was a great summary. Good afternoon, Audit Committee. Zach Fullerton, Knox County Internal Audit. Hope everyone's doing well. So just to jump straight into it, changes to the Audit Committee Charter and the Knox County Code. You might be wondering, and the answer is no, this does not rebrand us to Doge. But what it does do, in my opinion, is sort of modernize the Audit Committee Charter and the County Charter sections referring to internal audit. So starting on the Audit Committee Charter, we don't do things haphazardly. So I looked at a few different things. Other local government audit organizations, what their charter looks like. The Institute of Internal Auditors puts forth a model charter. Comptroller has some published guidance on what should be and should not be in audit committee charters. So incorporated some of the language from those documents and then socialized these edits with Pew and Company, Knox County Finance. Matt and I had several meetings about the changes, and this was the end result. I did speak with Jim this morning. We were having a conversation about some of the history of the Audit Committee Charter. So just to let you know, it was first approved in 2009, and then it was updated in 2010, 2014, 2015, and 2018. So it's been about 6 years since we've had any updates. Really the biggest change on the, sorry, go ahead.
I don't think you're on. I think you got to push the button.
Okay. Maybe I'm on, maybe I'm not. As far as the, you read off the modifications that had happened. I hope you found the same ones I did many years ago, but I never felt comfortable that it didn't have a tracking system. It wasn't like some of the contracts or even the ordinances for Knox County that, you go down and they'd show you the next change and you could do it with or without the changes and see it. The Audit Committee Charter was just always wherever you could find it. And so as part of all this, I'd just like to, hopefully we've got everything, because I think I provided them once upon a time back to Perry sometime, because and the last one should have been the one that Schoonmaker and Hugh did, Nystrom. I don't know if you got the flavor of who put them together or whatever, but so that's my 2 cents worth for now. And we might just want to think if we're going to accept these, just make sure we've got them all.
I checked with Jill in the law department. She sent me the copy of 09, 10, 14, 15, and 18. I think we've got, those are the only copies that the law department knows about. Those are only the ones that I'm going to know about. So there may be other versions out there that have existed in the past that I'm not knowledgeable about, but that's part of the effort. I think let's get to a standardized one that we can all agree on. We'll put it on our website, and that'll be the official copy going forward. So some of the major changes, just really quick, just some new language in the introduction and authority sections. Again, pulled those from other jurisdictions. Really the biggest change, the one thing I'll cover, we would be introducing a non-voting member to this committee from the Knox County Schools Board of Education. I've been in contact with Betsy Henderson. She okayed this, said that she would discuss that with the board and they would decide amongst themselves who would be willing to serve. But as we become more involved with Knox County Schools, I just thought that it would be important for their board to have a voice on this committee. That's really the biggest change. I think everything else is pretty minor. So I guess we would need a motion to either approve or defer or deny. And then I think if approved, they have to go on to the full commission for that vote.
And when I read it, I thought it's a little ironic because they're the group that always has the most people at these meetings, so they know what's going on. And again, I think back to when this was originally put together, and of course, everybody knows that these charter audit committees and stuff, had their birth with all the Enron stuff and all the problems back then, and it gradually, grew into corporations and then government and everything. So sometimes it seemed like I bet you found different ways people would add to, when somebody left or whatever. So I don't know that that's out of line or whatever, but I noticed the non-voting, so that I don't know what we gain from it, but I don't see what issue there is with them having that role.
Commissioner Jay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These changes should include everything from 2018. That was the first year I became a commissioner and joined the audit committee and worked with Hugh Nystrom and Commissioner Schoonmaker as well.
Yeah.
And so I believe those to be things. I'll make a motion to approve these as presented and send it on to commission for final approval.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay, we'll take the vote. All in favor?
I'll go nay.
All opposed? One.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if we have a nay vote, do we need to have some discussion on why it's, or was that been fairly discussed?
Was there additional discussion you wanted to have on that topic?
Again, I think some of this goes back to when it was originally put together with the environment in the accounting and finance world still, because of all the Enrons and everything else that was going on with that. And there was, of course, big companies, SEC-wise, big-wise, and then it kept filtering down. And some of the ways of, I'd have to look at the actual changes, but some of them I didn't know if we had a positive reason for doing them, and I'll go back one step in history. I haven't compared this. I asked 6 or 7 years ago, don't figure out how I've been on this committee that long. I think Perry has the math behind all that, but it would always, we didn't have many changes to it. And we didn't even know we had an audit committee charter at one point. So with that, it's sometimes we've changed, and I'd ask Andrea, Zach's predecessor, we have no help administratively wise. I wanted a conforming charter. And if you do this, there's not a problem with that, but that way we know you can look at it all in one place. That's the first thing I like about it, but on the other hand, sometimes I'm just not convinced that we have them, and I'm wondering, because I think Perry showed me one time the Audit Charter Committee document, and back to the Andrea and David Shields story, they presented it one time at the Audit Committee meeting, and they had just made editorial changes, well, I don't like this, we should change that. And I never felt like it got to, why are you wanting to do it? And so far, like with the schools, if you got a reason to do it. So I just don't know if any of this document here is one they pulled together, or if, you know, if this was just a brand new one, because I even think the one the law department had at one time was the version they did. I don't know what to do with that, and I don't know if it's worth holding this up to compare, because I've gone through here, and I can live with the changes, I understand them. I think I don't like, are we cutting our association with the local CPA chapter?
The local CPA chapter originally had responsibility to nominate, I guess, 2 individuals to serve on this committee, the 2 public individuals. We're just sort of opening that up so that it doesn't have to come strictly from that organization. You know, the local chapter of the Institute of Internal Auditors, Association of Local Government Auditors, anyone really. It would work similar to, I think, the Ethics Committee, where we send out a media broadcast and take applicants and then pick the most qualified individual.
I think the feeling at the time was.
I'm gonna have to cut off our discussion here just to keep things moving, but,
All right.
I was gonna say, we can call for the vote again.
Mr. Chairman, can I just say one quick thing?
Yeah.
I think thank you very much. I think, Mr. Morrison, if I heard correctly, I just want to reiterate, it is important for us to have a charter. For us,
Absolutely. Must have it.
to determine,
Yes, sir.
to say, here's who we are and here's our roles and responsibilities. You've taken our existing charter, looked at all previous additions, revisions, changes, talked to the comptroller of the state of Tennessee, which is sort of our governing body, if you will, in this space, asked for suggested language and things that would standardize us to other audit committees, and presented this for approval. And
Exactly.
is that
Sorry.
correct? Is that the process?
Yes,
Okay.
um,
And if the vote stands and it's adopted today, and there are specific changes in which any one of this committee does not like, they can propose to change it again at the next meeting, and we can continue to adapt it. But I don't see any reason, given the steps that have been placed forward, that we should move on and have a updated charter.
And it's kind of interesting because I wasn't here, but when Knox County did theirs, nobody else had done one. And so the state approved it. And then a year later, when the state came out with this mandate for everybody to have this, we were grandfathered in because we had already gotten it approved. And I think you're okay there. I don't have a problem with that. Again, it's just, I didn't like the breaking the link with the local CPA chapter, because this is really an accounting finance kind of situation. But I don't know that I would want to say somehow try to stop this. I was just sort of giving my opinion that I wasn't quite as comfortable with it. Dr. Carcello did the very first one, and so I knew it was done with some very serious understanding of what all this was supposed to be about, particularly the whole concept of the charter of audit committee. So, but I will. That's all I'll have to say.
With that, I was gonna say our vote that we recorded was 5-1 or 4-1 in favor, with Mr. Morrison, the lone nay vote. Does anybody wish to change their vote?
I don't want to change it. I don't want to change anything going forward. I just like to be on the record. I had some concerns about it, mainly
we
going
got
back
that
to its
now.
origin.
We do have to move on to other topics.
Sure.
So with that, the motion passes.
Chairman, we may want to just discuss really briefly the changes to the actual code too, since that's sort of, I don't know if we need a separate vote for that, the county charter. So there are just a couple of changes there. So when I was selected for this role, there was some confusion between the committee and Knox County Human Resources about how that process would work. So I worked with Stephanie Candler, as Senior Director of HR, just to lock in that wording of how that's going to operate. And then just really in Section 2-282, we sort of changed some of the wording just to make it clear. information is subject to our audit, not just financial records. We obviously do a lot of contract compliance audits, and so our scope is sort of beyond just financial records, but fairly low-level changes in my opinion. So I think we would potentially need to, we'll have to send that on to the full commission for probably a first reading and second reading.
So we need a motion for the change to the ordinance.
I believe so.
Motion to approve the changes to the ordinance as per presented with the other changes in the charter.
Second.
We'll take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing no objection, it passes. Thank you, Zach. We'll move on to the external audit update from Ted Holtz of Pew. Ted, we've got about 15 minutes for this topic. I think we were planning to cover primarily the schools audit, I think focus on key items that changed from our previous report, and then an update on the compliance report.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
First of all, Ted Holtz, Pew CPAs, audit partner, reside Gecko Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee. Let me first talk about the financial audit. The financial audit ACFR we plan to release tomorrow, so that report should be going out. The compliance report follows that. We're in good position to release that sometime in February. Probably we're shooting for the middle of the month. There is some back and forth there, but that report should be out soon, and certainly comfortable to be able to present it at the March Audit Committee meeting. Okay. That I'll move on. If no questions, I'll move on to the Knox County Schools Internal School Funds Audit Report. It's a big report. It's over 400 pages. Fun to put together. First of all, particularly for those new on the committee, the Internal School Funds Audit covers only the activity held at each school, the over 90 schools. It specifically excludes activity at the central office, other than there's a central office clearing account that's really related to the internal schools funds activity. So again, it's really a modified accrual report. It's predominantly a cash receipts, cash disbursements report. That's not specifically what it is, but there are very few accruals. There was a 7-page letter I'll talk about very briefly. That's a governance letter. Now, for Knox County government and central office, what we will present at the next report, there's an awful lot of information in there. For the schools, since it's basically primarily a cash receipts, cash disbursements type audit, there's very little unusual items in there, so I just make reference to it. We're required to provide it for you, but other than referring to internal control matters, which we're going to talk about briefly in the report on the second page there, it's really generic language, and we attach a copy of the management representation letter, the last 4 pages, I believe, of that letter. So unless there's any questions on the audit committee letter, governance letter, then I'm going to pass that, go on to the next report, which is the big report. In your report, I like to reference the table of contents only from the standpoint there's so many pages in the report. You have your basic financial statements on Roman numeral 2 to Roman numeral 4 is our audit report. If you want a summary look of all the balance sheet and then receipts and disbursements income statement, those are on pages 1 to 4. That shows every single school. If you want detail on the specific schools, that runs from pages 5 through 240. Footnotes of this report are very small, really, and then you get down to some other supplemental schedules, but the primary reports that we talk about in this meeting will be the internal control section, specifically findings. The page 390 and 391 of the report is basically a 2-page internal control letter, and it basically references findings that follow that immediately. So I'm going to go to page 392. I believe it's page 404 if you're looking at PDF page.
404 PDF
Okay.
for those.
Let me, one step back, I did forget. on the pages 1 to 4, the summary balance sheet and income statement, I did want to point out that while, you know, these are small checking accounts for the most part, or a lot of small transactions that's covered in this audit. Cash, though, held at the end of the year from all these 90 schools was about 16.8 million. So it's a lot of money still. And from a receipts and disbursement standpoint, or revenues and expenditures, total revenues was 25.2 million for the year, and total expenditures were 23.5. So while there's generally small transactions going through these accounts, there's a lot of them, and the dollars are significant, and that's why the state wants it audited. So, and I also went over the, if you take a look at the report, which is on Roman numeral 2 to Roman numeral 4, the wording is unique because we are required to report in accordance with the Tennessee State Code, basically, and they have a Tennessee Internal School Funds Manual. Our audit report is in compliance with that. It's not in compliance with GAAP, so the wording is strange, but it is the appropriate wording for this report. So it's a clean opinion on that basis of accounting, in case you had a question about that later. All right, we'll skip back to page 392 or 404, and this starts findings that we had during the year. There are 12 findings this year. There were 12 findings last year. On page 400 is kind of a summary of the findings from a year ago, and I'm going to kind of use that as a kind of a summary to go through, compare to last year. If you look on page 400 of the report, or 412 PDF page, and compare the current year to prior year,
400 is the,
schedule of prior year findings.
I've got fundraising and resale activities.
Okay, then it should be a schedule of prior year findings.
I think 406.
406,
Which is
okay.
418 in the PDF.
Okay, yeah, okay.
It's
406, yes.
418 in the PDF. It's labeled 406 at the bottom. It's the table that has,
Yeah, it's page 406 and 418, sorry, yes. But for reference, of the 12 findings we had a year ago, 2 of them have been resolved. Those were numbers 10 and 11, unclaimed property and funds not receipted. 6 of them, we have fewer instances than a year before, 3 about the same, and only 1 of them went up. So from that standpoint, very positive audit results in that regard. The one that went up is ticket reconciliation. It went up from 10 schools with an instance to 12 schools. So overall findings were encouraging that they're heading, at least trending in the right direction. Now, we did have 2 new findings, and they deal, and I'm going to go specifically to them. They're on page 404, which should be page 416 PDF. External fraud incident involving credit card theft. This is where an outside party got access to the credit card, and there were some significant charges. Eventually, the schools did receive their money back, so ultimately there was no loss to the school in this circumstance. But still, with the use of credit cards, you're going to have such risk. And then the second new finding is supplemental salary payments, and this is where, go ahead,
Commissioner.
yes,
Significant is an understatement.
yes.
With $200,000, was this referred in some way, shape, or form to the district attorney or any other higher governing body by the school system? Or is there anyone from the school system here that
I
is
know it
willing to
was
talk on
referred, but they can probably answer who it was referred to better than me. It was referred to the comptroller and also to the police.
And
Or
is
was
it,
it to the police or just the mayor?
and has there been any
Yes.
report or resolve or further action? When did this happen? How about somebody from the
Yeah,
school
I'll let
system?
them answer.
If you could identify yourself, please.
Yeah, Ron McPherson, Knox County Schools. Thank you, Commissioner Jay.
When did this incident occur, or when was it discovered?
Central office in our review discovered it. And, so,
When?
March. Yeah, 20.
Okay.
It's
Do you
20
guys want a second to talk about this so you can get, somebody can, when did it occur? What happened? What was the action that was taken? And what's the status? That's what I want to know.
Okay, it occurred, it occurred in March 2024. And we immediately alerted the schools. And then we alerted law enforcement, we alerted, and it wasn't our employee. It was an outside entity or individuals. I'm not sure of the status on the investigation. I believe there has been some movement. There have been, Garrett, has there been some identification? There hasn't been any identification, although this.
I'm sorry, I'm sort of digging in. This is a $200,000. Now, it may have not been a lost in the final dollar amount for your records, but it's a $200,000 theft by somebody that does not work for our school system that was able to get a credit card,
They got the number.
right, and somehow charge up to $200,000 worth of stuff before anybody caught it. Like, this is not trivial, guys. So I think this committee
Well,
deserves a little bit of information.
I think it's,
Sort of
yeah,
buried
I
in a
would just
report
answer
on
it this way.
400.
I would answer it this way. So, at the school level, we train bookkeepers to be very diligent in their review of credit card spending. This is not through district funds, it's at the school level. And however, we review, and when we did review, we found some discrepancies. Our hope would have been, obviously, for the school bookkeeper, for that to have been determined or discovered at the school level. At district office, we're there for support, and obviously we do what we can. But unfortunately, this occurred at the school level, and but it was discovered by central office. So again, we provide a significant amount of training, but sometimes we don't. I guess I would say we don't do. We don't hope we can't be at all the schools at one time. I guess.
Was there a report sent to the comptroller from the school system? Has that report been given to this audit committee? You must have done an investigation.
Garrett Radin, Director of Internal School Funds for Knox County Schools. When we issue reports, or when we do not issue reports on what the comptroller does.
No. You must
we
have done
gave the
investigation and
to
given
the
them
comptroller's
information,
office.
right?
Yes, sir. We gave the information to the comptroller's office.
Did that information get sent to this audit committee?
It did not, because they did not issue a report.
Did your information you gave to the comptroller also get sent to this audit committee?
To our external auditors, yes, sir.
Which is Pew?
Yes,
And
sir.
is that investigation available to this committee?
Like I mentioned, sorry, Ted, with you, we did not issue a report to Ted.
I'm just gonna back out. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult. You all discovered something. You gathered all the information and you put that together to give to the internal auditor. Is that correct, Ted? Okay. Is that same report of everything you put together and gave to the auditor available to this committee? Or was it sent to this committee? Because I'm reading here on page, what are we on? 404, that there was a fraudulent charge of approximately $200,000. It was only detected after the credit card limit was increased. So somebody has stolen a number, somebody has increased a line of credit to $200,000 on a credit card, which is baffling to me. I mean, this is not trivial. So where is that information coming to us? Or are we just gonna wait, are we just waiting for the comptroller to maybe give us a report someday, whenever? This is what this committee is for.
Yeah.
So is that report that you gave the auditor available to this committee? That's my question.
I don't know, Ted. We could.
I can say this, information was given to me. It wasn't necessarily what I'd call a report, so I could substantiate that the charges occurred and that they have since received the funds back, so there is no loss. That much I can.
There may not be a loss, but there is a crime.
I understand that.
So you or somebody took that information and gave it to the comptroller in a presentation in which they can digest it, I imagine.
The information.
You just called them and said, hey, we got this issue?
That's how it often happens, yes. That's how the comptroller wants information.
Just verbally, like pick up the phone, say, hey,
There are many ways in which you can contact the comptroller's office to communicate.
Have we,
I'm not, it's normally the school's responsibility to make that communication. If I find out if it hasn't been done, then I will make that communication, okay?
Okay, I don't think I'm out of line trying to understand better, and I'm
I'm-
sorry,
I'm
Mr. Chairman,
trying
I
to
know
answer, yeah.
we're literally on one page of one report and a huge agenda, but we have a $200,000 theft and somebody who authorized a massive amount on a credit card limit and a potential criminal investigation that nobody can give us much information on, and it concerns me greatly.
Okay. My job's more so from the reporting standpoint.
hey, Commissioner Jay, can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah.
Have we, what have we done internal control wise to address this?
Yeah.
And what have we changed to, I don't say make it absolutely possible to happen, but what have we done to try to make this?
May I interject and also try to clarify a question? Because I do this for a living, with credit card fraud. So
Good.
we see it all the time. You know, most banks have you have an option of credit cards, or you can also do purchasing cards through a system. Do you use purchasing card system, or do you have just flat credit cards?
In this instance, it was credit cards, right, Garrett? It was not the.
We use the same exact system that Knox County government uses.
And do
It's
that-
an e-commerce system through Truist Bank.
Through Truist Bank, okay,
Yes, sir.
so it is to explain to everybody in the room, the difference between a credit card and a purchasing card is that it's additional controls. So a credit card is that if I give each of us a credit card with a $10,000 limit, each of us have $10,000 and, that's it. But a purchasing card means that somebody in the central office, an accountant, has control over that and can increase, somebody in the central office is the one in the finance department increasing the availability of that credit card as long as Truist okays it. And but somebody is internally increasing that. Somebody would have had to get into the system to hack, to increase it.
You are correct that we have that system just like the county government does. We increase credit limits as we see that the schools need to use the cards. So for example, most schools have all schools have a set credit limit, and the cards.
And what would that be? Do
It
you know
varies by
offhand?
each school, so that's a very generalized statement. I can give you just an estimate.
Sure.
It would be an average of around $15,000 to $30,000, but that's a low estimate. We have 53 elementary schools, 16 high schools, and 16 middle schools. So with that said, the limit at elementary school is going to be way lower than a high school. That brings in $3 million a year.
Sure, so would that high school have a $200,000 limit?
Maybe half of those do, and about 5 or 6 have greater than that, depending on how they use it. If they have a large purchase that they're fixing to purchase, maybe a scoreboard or a facility where we would want those
So
rebate points.
another thing that you can do with purchasing cards
Yes, sir.
is restrict what can be spent
That's correct, and we do
on.
that as well.
Okay.
We do all that as well, yes, sir. Everything that you're saying, sir, we do.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
whoever spent the money within the parameters of however you set up the system.
Yes, sir, it was used at various, I think it's okay to say, Lowe's, Home Depots, et cetera, across the state and the country. And it was a MCC restriction, which is what you're referring to, Merchant Category Code, which we okayed because we purchase things from those stores or businesses commonly, especially at a high school level. And when that was done, the card basically was scammed. right? Like skimmed or whatever the term may or may not be.
It happens every
It
day.
happens every day.
It
Yes, sir.
happens every day. It's unfortunate. That's a lot of money,
Yes, it is.
but I share Commissioner Jay's concern that, getting up to $200,000 without somebody seeing it,
We caught it in 5 days.
5 days?
I think that's pretty
That's pretty
fast.
That's what I wanted to highlight. Is at
That's
least
pretty
for the
fast. I
report,
caught
was
it in
found
5
by
days.
guys.
Yeah.
So-
they were going in, and this is what a lot of the crooks do. They go to Home Depot and they buy gift cards, and then they put it on eBay. And
May or may
then
not have done that.
launder it to cash.
And unfortunately, sir, I'm not aware of what they did with the money, but
I'm
but they
I'm
did.
just telling you from my
Absolutely.
experience, that's what they do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So it was across the entire country. We filed a police report. We did every step by the book, what we usually do. We contracted the comptroller's office of the report. I contacted external audit of the report. And when I say report, I reported it. Not a actual report was issued. I don't do that. Once that was done and completed, I have no clue where it is in the police process, but we got our money back. And that's all that we're required to do. Meaning we got our money back.
When we got our money back, did they refund it as opposed, they didn't?
Unfortunately, that was the nightmare of the problem, which is what Ted was inferring, or in my words, what he was alluding to. It took us a while because they issued it as a credit, which you all know, on a cash-based system with accounting that we don't have necessarily in our schools, that it was very tough to deal with credits on a bank statement. But we did get the money back. I believe it was June. Please don't quote me on that, but it was right before year end, and we received the money. So there wasn't a receivable outstanding.
So just me not knowing the situation, one thing that I might recommend is looking at, restricting the geographic. You can.
Yes, sir.
You can limit the geography of where that they can spend that.
Yeah, the state.
As well.
It's harder to do the state with our system. We are still learning how to do that. But the good news is that we've actually increased back to Mr. Morrison's point, we increased the level of how we use the cards. But please know, and I believe this was in the management response, that this is very difficult to do with staffing. I hope that's okay to say. So, I'm the director of the internal school funds, and I have 4 people that work underneath me for 5 regions and about 93 bookkeepers. So with that said, I mean, again, it's no justification. It is the God's honest truth. So with that said, I know we need to move on, but wanted to just say that we do have really, really good controls over that. But I will say it's still being piloted at a couple schools for now. But the other schools that have the cards do have great controls. We have not had issues. And when we do catch these things, we catch them fairly fast. And I would just like to point out, in the past, this was done through blank checks. So which one would you rather want? Blank checks or something I can catch in 5 days?
I'm just curious about one thing, is the 398 transactions, is that just a large amount that some of these came in under, or were there actually 398 instances of, I'm reading this just under the cause and effect. I didn't know if it happened that many times, or
No, it wasn't.
if that
200
was just a
transactions.
sample
I
and they
think that
pulled
was-
from that.
Yeah, it may have been the sample. I'll let Ted speak to that. Thank you, guys.
We do look at a lot of transactions. I'd have to look back at that number or anything, but we do put an emphasis on reviewing credit card transactions. So, and especially the schools did have changed their policy where they've gone to more credit card transactions than checks, as Garrett had alluded to. The good news is that their review process is quicker than it has been before, or waiting for the bank statements back. The bad news is, there is increased risk, as we've seen in this situation, so.
Yeah, I'll just add, and correct me if I'm misstating this, but
And
it was
I-
caught by the control on the back end control, and that's where
It was caught by the back end
Yeah.
control, yes.
it's kind of the free safety in football. That,
Yes.
you know, it's out there, it's trying to make that tackle. You don't want that to be who makes the tackle, but it was caught by the controls that are in place.
Yeah. And I'm not certain that that transaction number is correct, so, but the process is still the same.
I would ask for a little clarity on the transaction part. Might not be right since, I mean, it does say in the report. and
Yes.
It's a little ambiguous in the terms of how it's worded, but it says
Correct.
that
It
internal
could-
school
it could be a
funds reviewed
sample.
398.
Yeah,
Sample
it
size
could be
of-
something at fat fingered, so, okay. But the process is still the same. And, you know, again, this was something from an auditor's perspective. This happened this year, first time that's happened, but policies have changed, and it's something that we're going to continue to take a hard look at in future years, including comparing even a deeper dive into the school's policies and controls over credit cards. Because it, you know, again, this is a relatively new thing, and it's not something we looked at this one year. It's going to take a deeper dive in coming years.
Hey, Sean, I've got a question. When something like this happens, does the merchant or whoever, or us, in our situation, we get the money back, but did we take a hit for that somehow, or was it somehow through the credit card protection that you read about they may have? I'm still not certain who.
Well, it depends, but basically we get our money back if it's reported within a certain amount of time. And
Okay.
then the merchant and the bank negotiate it, and, you know,
Okay,
it
so-
depends. So that
Yes.
eats it. Usually the bank.
Does that give any indication where they felt like maybe the break in this situation was, that they didn't think it was anything we had to do with it, other than maybe increasing the what was it? I think the transaction limit. But so I hate that it happened, and I'm just sort of trying to get a feel for, is there, it's something that we were basically, we were indemnified against that. I don't know that that's the right word, but we didn't take a hit for the cash.
We didn't get our hit, but it would be, you know, and it would be a good recommendation to make to internal audit, to put it on our internal audit schedule to look at the controls of credit cards.
Right.
And, yeah, and also whether a $200,000 limit is, you know, too much.
Well, you will also notice in the management response, and it was a high school, that's all I'm going to say, so it was one that had a higher initial limit, but I think in that short period, 5-day period, it did get increased from its original level to up to 200,000. I don't remember how much it was, but still, and then it got caught at that point. So that's kind of the history, and like I said, that's part of the management response in there.
I was gonna say,
Oh, go ahead, yes.
Commissioner Russell.
I was going to say, the company that I work for, of course, it's a $40 billion company, so maybe we have some advantages that other people don't. But I have a company card that has a very high limit. Anytime I use my company card, it sends me a notice on my phone, and I have to say, yes, I did use my card. So there are simple apps out there where you can have it. I mean, you can even do it on your personal credit card, where anytime you use your credit card anywhere, it pops up on your phone and says, do you want to approve this? And I just hit approve or disapprove. So it's really easy to put controls over credit cards.
I usually get the notice before the waiter brings me the ticket that it's already hit. So, but now I don't have it set up that I have to say yes or no.
We have it set, I mean, there are apps out there where you literally have to say, yes,
Yeah, no.
I approve this.
If there's no further discussion on that topic, I was gonna say, Commissioner Jay, I think you may have some follow-up questions questions for the school board, but we can handle that outside of this meeting.
Okay.
Ted, did you want to cover the other new item?
The other new item deals with supplemental salary payments, and this basically like when coaches are paid from a school support organization or a booster club. They're required to actually go through the schools. So this is not something that's really new, but it's a point of emphasis from the state. So the state has cracked down on that, and there were a couple instances of this. And this is really, other than communication between the schools and the school support organization, something really difficult to monitor. But it is reported as a new finding this year.
Just to clarify, the school support organizations are independent
Correct.
entities, right? Or
Yes.
bodies.
Yes.
And there's no jurisdiction of the schools over those bodies. So
Very limited, yes.
is there any other questions on that topic? Mr. Morrison?
No, I just know how many school organizations don't register, as I understand. So I don't know if that's an issue or not in and of itself.
And that's discussed a little bit in finding number 8 on page 401, but that's been a carry forward issue.
Is it, I assume it's about the same kind of percentage of them, or?
Similar. There's been the schools can probably speak better on this, but there's been a little more traction in this area, so hopefully there'll be better communication and back and forth between SSOs and the school going forward, but there has been an emphasis on that, so. Okay. That kind of goes through the findings and pretty much goes through the report. It's a big report, but, you know, the findings normally is the area that people look at. The rest are information, financial information on each school and summary school pages. So any other questions on the internal school funds audit report?
No, I'm okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Ted.
thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have Philip Vincent with the Knox County Petty Cash. We're gonna try to spend about 10 minutes here.
Good afternoon, Philip Vincent, Internal Audit. Tell you about the petty cash audit. So we did this audit because of the heightened risk inherent with the use of cash and because finance requested our help to clean up the petty cash accounts. The objective of the audit was to assess Knox County's petty cash accounts, verify the accuracy, reasonableness, and completeness of transactions, and identify any potential misuse. The scope of the audit included Knox County's petty cash accounts and munis, any related accounts payable transactions from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. We reviewed the Knox County Internal Control Manual, we researched best practices, we coordinated site visits, and Harrison and I performed cash counts. We didn't surprise anyone, but there were some who were surprised when we showed them the balance in the account.
What does that mean?
I'm going to get to it.
Okay.
So in our findings, I'll go over that. But basically, not every department uses or checks munis.
Okay.
So just to give you a little bit of background on page 1, petty cash is a predetermined amount of money reserved for small purchases for which submitting a check request or using a purchase card would be impractical. Petty cash should be stored in a secured location with access restricted to authorized individuals, and procedures should be in place to record and reconcile every transaction. So how it works is a county employee needs stamps, for example, makes a small dollar purchase. The employee presents their receipts to the petty cash custodian in that department. The petty cash custodian keeps the receipts and disperses the cash or coin back to the employee. The custodian then records the disbursements on a check request form and notes which general ledger expense accounts to charge. Nearing depletion of the funds, authorized check requests and receipts are sent to Finance. Finance reviews the documents and scans the receipts into Munis. They record the journal entries and they issue a check. And then the petty cash custodian takes the check to the bank, cashes it, and replenishes the lockbox. Some Knox County departments have used the term petty cash and change fund interchangeably over the years, leading to confusion over account usage and discrepancies in the general ledger account balances. Use of P cards has also become prevalent, so less need to have cash laying around. So what we tested on page 3, to establish our testing universe, we queried Munis for a balance sheet report and filtered for accounts containing petty cash in the description. We identified 25 petty cash accounts within our scope, totaling $16,637. We grouped the accounts by Knox County Department. There's a graph there on page 3. The Health Department had 8 accounts. The Trustee Department just had 1 account, but they had the largest balance at $6,800. There's 25 accounts listed as petty cash in Munis, but only 7 were actively being used as petty cash. We developed.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
Is petty cash separate than, it's not commingled with people paying for transactions with cash? Like if I were to come in and pay my taxes at the trustee's office in cash, that would not be included in the petty cash. That would be included in a transactional basis. Or if I was paying a court cost in cash or a bail bond in cash or something like that, that would not be included in this, correct?
That's correct.
So this is cash specifically allocated for petty cash.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And at the trustee's office with the $7,000, I think that's entirely just to make change. So it's called petty cash, but it's just for making change. But I'll get to that. It's just misclassified as how they use it. So we developed some attributes for testing on page 4. When we interviewed the cash custodians, we asked, is the petty cash secured in a locked area? Is the petty cash custodian separate of the person approving the receipts? Does money on hand plus receipts equal the account balance? We also sampled check requests for testing and we reviewed receipts. We checked to see if the request was approved, if it was complete, if all the receipts are accurate and the receipts are appropriate, and was it properly coded in Munis. We also asked the account custodians, when was the last petty cash reimbursement that was submitted to Knox County Finance, whether the usage was active or idle, and whether the department actually needed the account or could alternatively use a P card. So on to the findings, page 5. Our first finding was inaccurate petty cash accounts. There's 3 ways that they could be inaccurate. So the first way, we had 8 accounts that were missing, straight into darkness. We had 4 accounts with inaccurate balances. Some had more, some had less. And we had 6 accounts that were not listed in Munis. These are all from the Health Department. They had created them and they were all for making change. So, possible reasons for inaccurate accounts. There has not been ongoing communication regarding the accounts between the cash custodians and Knox County Finance. Unfortunately, the general ledger accounts predate the current cash custodians, so I couldn't get a lot of answers, but there's some examples where perhaps the accounts were closed and instead of the money being turned in as petty cash, it was just all turned in as revenue. Because when I reached out to the folks, they said, no, we don't have petty cash, or we haven't used it in a long time. But that was before they assumed the position. So our recommendation here for the inaccurate accounts is that finance should work with the county departments to facilitate the closure or update of petty cash accounts, which are either missing or inaccurate or not listed in Munis. and ensure cash accounts are appropriately reconciled to the financial records on an annual basis. Our second finding has to do with
1 second, Phil. Mr. Morrison,
Pardon?
did you have a question? Yeah.
I thought that was my microphone.
Sorry. Oh, I just noticed it over there. Sorry.
So our second finding has to do with the misclassified accounts, and this is where you're gonna see the ones that are listed as petty cash, but instead they're being used as change funds. So there's 8 accounts there. So the reason for this is that the distinction between the two types of accounts, petty cash and change fund, may not have been properly communicated by finance, or simply that over the years, the usage of the account has changed and no one told finance. Unfortunately, this increases the risk of funds being misused. What we recommend is that finance should reclassify the 8 misclassified accounts and update the Knox County Internal Control Manual to request the establishment or reclassification of balance sheet accounts when opening petty cash or change fund accounts. Then our third finding had to do with inappropriate petty cash transactions. We identified one department, KCSO, which allowed reimbursement of expenses to include sales tax. One check request had 34 receipts, 15 of which included sales tax. That's only $60 worth of sales tax, but that's almost half of the transactions in that check request. Employees are expected to take a tax-exempt certificate with them along with their ID, showing that they are a Knox County employee so that the vendor will accept their tax-exempt status. The other inappropriate transaction we found was an inappropriate reimbursement in the juvenile court where an employee was reimbursed for a parking ticket. A boy named Sue parked in front of a fire hydrant, and that could have been a problem if there was a burning ring of fire. Although incurred while the employee was performing county business, parking fines would not generally be considered an incidental expense reimbursable via petty cash. There's a little picture of the parking ticket on page 8, and if you look at the date on the parking ticket, it's 2021. The employee left in 2022. The amount of the ticket is $26, but the threshold in the petty cash account is $100. So it's up to the custodian to decide when to submit the check request, and our scope was 2023, and they had waited to reimburse it until then. So this can lead to timing differences, and that will delay the review that the accounts payable department performs on the receipts. So what we recommend for the inappropriate transactions is that finance codify internal controls in the Knox County Internal Control Manual to ensure petty cash is used solely for authorized and legitimate incidental expenses, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Last, we identified 2 opportunities for improvement. One of them was a lack of segregation of duties. Based on our testing, there were 7 petty cash accounts, and we found that the petty cash custodian was the same individual who approves the receipts for 5 of those 7 accounts. Additionally, in 4 of the 7 accounts, it's the same petty cash custodian who is approving the check request, signing it, and submitting it to finance. Internal audit suggests that finance review these responsibilities with the departments and help them appropriately segregate the duties. Second, internal audit identified an opportunity for improvement regarding the use of P-cards. Not so sure about that now. Just kidding. But P-cards are generally regarded as a safer alternative to cash. Candidates for P-card substitution were due to their extremely infrequent usage of accounts or the nature of the purchases. Finance should consider closing the following 5 accounts and recommending the departments utilize P-cards instead. Page 9, We have 2 accounts that were idle. One of them since 2013, it's been free-falling. You'll notice juvenile court is on there, and maybe if they had a P card, that would also help segregate the duties. And the appropriate supervisor would be in charge as opposed to the petty cash custodian when it comes to paying the expenses. So management concurred with all 3 findings. It'll all work out. I'm happy to answer any questions. I won't back down. Sir, Tom Petty, Petty Cash. Thanks.
You've been saving those up, Commissioner Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This might be a question for the Knox County Finance Department and Mr. Caldwell, but you might be able to answer it. There's virtually nothing I ever interact with, including parking meters or buying stamps or doing anything that doesn't have the ability to use a card. Tell me why we should have any petty cash accounts whatsoever in Knox County.
Okay. I thought you guys might be curious about who got to keep their petty cash accounts. So the department's got to keep them and this is up to finance. When we did the audit and the questions I asked, it seemed like the Attorney General needed one, the Health Department needed one, the Sheriff's Office and the jail transport. The jail transport, they transport the prisoners, they have gas and food, and they said that food is not allowed on a P card. But maybe that's something that they could work out with finance. For the Attorney General, I think there was these $2 bonds. And the Health Department, they just had a lot of transactions that that seemed that they could qualify for incidentals based on the number of employees. Maybe we don't want everyone to have a P card, or it wouldn't be practical to issue everyone one. And then the same thing for the sheriff. There's a lot of people on patrol. I don't know if they're all going to get a P card. And when they have an emergency, if they need to go in and buy something, it's just faster.
Okay, so have you worked with Knox County Finance to identify that? And, I mean, ultimately, the Finance Department manages and made those recommendations, and maybe Mr. Caldwell, you might want to add something to the discussion. It seems to me that we can handle our own controls by shutting a lot of these down and saying you don't need them anymore.
Chris Caldwell, Finance. We appreciate internal audit. We actually worked with them and asked them to look into this for us for that reason, to reduce the amount of petty cash that we have. And I think that this has done that, and so we'll reduce the ones. We're also going to work with the Sheriff's Office to see if maybe that they can get away from cash and just do a P card. And we do know that some of the things that were labeled as petty cash were basically fee offices that have to make change or start the day with so much money in a cash register, and so we understand those. But ultimately, our goal was to get as much of that petty cash off the books as possible.
Okay, at our next audit committee meeting, could you please report which ones have been reduced or shut down? I'm concerned about some of these that have $4,000, $6,000, $8,000.
Sure.
And just give us an update on that in a few months.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments on that topic? Thanks, Philip. Next on the agenda is internal audit update from Zach. Zach, I tried to leave you a lot of time, and I failed.
All right, I'm still Zach Fullerton, Knox County Internal Audit. So let's jump right into the board packet. You'll see some changes there. Got some pictures, better graphs, directory. So pretty jazzed about that. But let's start on page 1, just talking about the closed projects. You just heard about the petty cash audit. You know, Philip joined us in late September. We put him right on that. He knocked it out and really, really quickly. So pleased to get those issues cleaned up. I guess to clarify and sort of reiterate what Chris said on your first question, Commissioner Jay, that I think all of those accounts were originally intended and given to the departments to be used as petty cash. What has happened as the departments have realized, well, we've got this money on hand, we're not using it. We maybe open up a new till, and then they just take out of the petty cash, throw it in as a change fund, and so that's why we had that finding. Let's get those cleaned up categorize them in munis appropriately, so our financials match reality. The second listed item is the property assessor attestation. So as a reminder, we always do a limited scope, agreed upon procedures engagement when an elected office changes hands. So we'll want to discuss this in executive session so that we don't impede on any work being performed by the comptroller's office. The next three projects are all control risk evaluations, one by Harrison, one by Nathan, and one by Philip. I won't spend too much time here. We've got a CRE summary page at the end of the packet. And then lastly, just some audit initiatives we knocked out, sort of trying to change our audit report formatting, make it a little bit more digestible for you guys, sort of, again, looked at other local audit government agencies and see what their reports look like, take some best practices from that. So hopefully you'll see some improvements there. And then, of course, the Audit Committee charter updates. So the second page is sort of ongoing and upcoming projects. I just wanted to mention these briefly. The PBA City Counting Building Space Management Audit. We met with Jane Burritt January 15th to discuss the results of that audit. Sent out the draft report on January 17th. PBA has until February 7th to respond. So my expectation is we'll have that final report ready to present in March at our next meeting, barring any unforeseen problems. Currently also engaged with the Knox County Sheriff's Office in a review of their fleet. If you'll remember, we looked at county fleet, then we looked at schools fleet, now we're looking at the Sheriff's Office fleet. So in the field work stage of that, things are progressing well. And then, of course, the Knox County Schools payroll audit. So we sort of initiated this right before the holidays, now post-holidays, getting back into the swing of field work. That's a big audit. We're looking at a lot of different things, but primarily the compensation study that was done, was that implemented correctly, and then just general payroll disbursements examination. So sort of starting on that compensation side, figuring out how we need to sample and getting that testing underway. Have a few other initiatives that were on the fiscal year plan. I'll just skip over those for time. And then just wanted to mention too, management requests. We get these from time to time. I would put as needed. It's probably more as time allows, but we've got a meeting with the clerk and master tomorrow to discuss a project that he asked to meet about, potentially have internal audit help him on. And then also Knox County Finance, we have a project maybe considering the budget and line item transfers and sort of how the budget gets approved and maybe take a little burden off of Knox County Commission. So those are a couple of things that are on our radar going forward. Page 3, some just general updates. So staff news, just wanted to, you've seen Nathan's name on the past few pages, wondered who is that? Well, wanted to welcome him, Nathan Wallace. He joined us in October, and he's got his JD from LMU. Previously worked for the city, so he's joining the good guys now. But Nathan actually also serves as an officer in the Tennessee Army National Guard, and I wanted to mention that the day he started, he got orders to go and serve in East Tennessee for the hurricane relief. So he was with us for one day, came in the second day for orientation, and shipped right off to East Tennessee for that hurricane relief effort. So just really proud of that, and he's been a great asset to the team after he got back. Lori did leave our office on January 16th. Hate to lose her. She'd been with us for around 3 years, just sort of pursuing some other opportunities. I think she was going on a cruise, so pretty jealous of that. But we've got that job posted on the county's website. Had a really, really good response to that. Been really pleased. We had 2 interviews yesterday. We've got 2 interviews tomorrow. So I think we'll have that filled immediately. Dynetics, just wanted to mention that. That's our external IT auditors that we engage with occasionally, usually once per year. We spoke with them in early January. What we want to have them do for us is the payroll audit, of course, relies heavily on the school's version of Munis. Well, Knox County has an internal controls document for our version of Munis, but we don't have that for the school's version. So we're probably going to use Dynetics. They're working up a work breakdown summary for us to look over. Going to have them come in, look at some IT controls over the school's version of Munis, and that'll feed right into our payroll audit. Some other quick items. So I met with the Hamilton County Internal Audit Director and his audit manager back in October just to talk about operating procedures. It's interesting, Hamilton County is in the process of creating their own audit committee. So I just sort of, gave them some background information on how this audit committee operates, how the reporting structure works. And they're also switching to use the audit software that we use, HighBond. So I just sort of gave them a tour of how we use our software. So, just really like to have those connections across the state with the other internal audit departments. There's only a handful, but always good to make those professional connections. Another thing I wanted to mention, so we've got a new tracking mechanism that we implemented in HighBond, allows us to track our open issues a little bit better, sets up actions to where the auditor in charge of the issue will receive an email notification at set intervals, so 60 days, 30 days, a week out from that due date, so they can re-engage with the auditee, make sure that the plan has been put in place. I know that was a question maybe before about how we track those, and we've always tracked them, but now I think we're just have a more focused approach on that. And then just quickly, the rest of the team is going to be in CCFO for this upcoming cohort, and we were all in compliance with our CPE requirements. We have to have 80 hours of CPE within a 2-year window, so I'm supposed to report out to you guys about that status, and everyone was totally in compliance, so good there. I did get to present at the Personnel Committee last week. Just told them sort of about internal audit, what we do, what our function is, how our reporting structure is set up. Talked a little bit about Audit Committee. Commissioner Russell was there, so she's had to hear from me twice in the last week. Condolences to her, but it's always good to just interact with some of the other commissioners, let them know about the, in my opinion, valuable services that internal audit can offer. So if you're following along, let's move to page 4. That's the hotline summary page. A little bit different than past packets, a lot of information here to digest, but I think the most important thing, maybe at the bottom, since the last audit committee, at the last audit committee, we had 3 active investigations. Since then, we've had 4 new ones reported, complaints reported to us, so that's a total of 7. We've closed out 5 of those, and we have 2 active investigations. Did want to note a couple of those that we were able to close out. We actually referred over to the Knox County Sheriff's Office. They didn't relate to fraud, waste, or abuse. It was actually criminal activity affecting a Knox County citizen. We spoke recently with our KCSO contact. I think one of those complaints that we forwarded actually led to an arrest. So, it's just really great to have that open line of communication with them. It's not really something we've had in the past, but good to see good action taken. But anyway, I just wanted to say, we're always working through investigations. It's a big part of what we do. It takes a lot of time, a lot of resources. But I would say, please just trust the process, whether we're able to reach a final resolution or we have to turn things over to state agencies like the comptroller. These things do reach a final conclusion. We just have to sort of let the process progress, no matter how time-consuming or frustrating it can be for you all, for our office. Just sort of trust the process. On to page 5, so you have our risk and recommendation summary. I think all of these charts might be new, but just sort of exploring better ways to convey this information to you. At the top left, we had 2 recommendations that we closed since our last meeting, 26 that remain open, and then there's our all-time recommendation status of 197. To the right there, sort of just categorizing that, in terms of risk. We always have significant findings, which are high risk, and then lower level risk. Those are just sort of for the open recommendations. And then, of course, just a pie chart about which departments still have open recommendations. The 2 that we closed, which is on page 6, they're both from the Knox County Sheriff's Office non-seized inventory. Richard and I went and met with Captain Bryan at the Sheriff's Office training facility out near the detention facility, sort of looked over their new operating procedures, their new inventory process. They have a new system. It looks much, much better. That system has audit logs, inventory location history. Inventory is assigned to a specific officer. We did just some cursory examination during that meeting of a inventory item, and we were able to track it to its exact location from the system to where it was located. So they've made strides in that area. And then, of course, we talked through sort of the new changes to the procedures. One of our recommendations was about segregation of duties. I think when we were out there, they maybe only had 2 people on staff, so very difficult to segregate duties when you have limited staffing, but basically the captain had taken control over all ordering. All ordering flows through him, has to have his approval, and then he also does monthly checks of the inventory actions that were taken by the other employee to make sure that there's nothing out of the ordinary. So we were comfortable with those actions that they had taken. We closed those, with the caveat always, we may come back and do future testing as they build out that inventory system. I think it might be a good idea to just go back and, do some actual sampling, some full testing, and make sure that it looks as good as it seems to look. So some revised dates on page 7, just really quick. We moved out the deadline date for the continuity of operations plan. Community dev and the mayor's chief of staffs are working on that with our external provider, IEM. And I think what we still have left to do is we have to run through an exercise of that, of a disaster event, and then create an after-action report. So those are the two sort of outstanding items. They think they can get it done between now and the end of the fiscal year, so we moved out that date to the fiscal year. The other one's just about non-seized inventory, creating a specific SOP about their operating procedure about their inventory practice, formalizing it. Their legal counsel asked us just for a deadline to March 31st. They had some other SOPs that were more pressing that they needed to get to. So we did that and just updated the packet as such. And then if you'll flip forward to page 10, we were actually going to do a quick 5-minute presentation on each of these, but because of time constraints, we thought it might be more efficient if I just went over the summary page. Keep in mind, CRE's way more limited in scope than full audits. We just look at the controls and risks associated with a singular process, right? So we don't do any testing, we don't have any findings, but I think it can be really valuable for the department because we sort of flow chart their process, from start to beginning. And a lot of departments have actually internalized that, used it for training purposes or to further refine their process. It's sort of different when you talk about it and then see it laid out in a flow chart. So, really fairly high assurance scores for all three of these. I don't know how much detail we want to go into. We looked at the grants, time tracking, and leave allocation. That was just sort of, you can imagine Knox County receives grants. Some of those grants allow for an employee's holiday, annual sick leave to be applied to them. It takes really detailed time tracking on community development's part, transfer that information up to finance. Finance calculates how does that benefit need to be applied out to the grants, and then does the journal entries to move that funding around in Munis. So we looked at that process, identified just a couple of opportunities for improvement, really succession planning, and then documenting that process. There's really no formal documentation for that, so we want to make sure that there is. The second one was the KCSO open records request process. We just looked at that in terms of how is management fulfilling requests, denying requests, and then providing access to the public. So obviously we're not going to get a lot of information about the output quality without doing testing, but we did witness some really quick turnaround. They have 2 employees down there. They are absolutely inundated with requests, as you can imagine. A constant stream are coming in. And for only having 2 people, they're doing a really good job. The process seems fairly tight. It's a technical term, right? Fairly tight. Well, we had 3 improvements identified. One was IT related, so it won't necessarily go into that. But the other 2, documenting the process, and I forget the other one. I'm sure Nathan could tell us. But so, and then there's the last one, circuit court cash handling. Looked at their, when they bring in cash for filings or new cases, what that sort of process looks like. You probably saw in the executive summary. Really, really great process. Really, really good segregation of duties. Probably some of the best I've seen. We only had 1 suggested improvement there. They have a section in the Knox County Internal Control Manual that is currently outdated versus what they're doing. So, I said, let's take our flow chart that we provided to you, get that updated since that's the official control document. So, and then the 3 reports follow that summary page in my packet. But that's the end of my update. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Okay,
Thanks, Zach. Moving on to our last couple of items, future audit committee. meeting planning, we've tossed out, and I know I circulated this with the group, Monday, March 10th at 2:30 PM. I believe I did not hear any objections for that, just for context from making sure that we're following up on items on my list for that, particularly in addition to other items that may come up, is the follow-up with finance regarding the petty cash process. I believe we'll need to discuss the Pew contract renewal. We'll have an update from Pew regarding the compliance audit. And if necessary, we'll go into the control risk evaluations a little deeper, and then, of course, the internal audit update. Was there anything else that anybody else wanted to make sure that's covered? Okay. Is there any other business for the committee? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 7B. I believe Zach referenced this, but in accordance with the statute, we can hold the confidential non-public executive session under the applicable statute listed here by vote of the committee. I know Zach referenced the need for that, so I will open that up as a motion for us to move into the executive session.
Is there something I'm missing that maybe you're wanting to have this for? The executive session? Usually I kind of know what it's about, or I don't know if you're giving us a choice.
No, as it's listed here, it's the discussion of confidential matters under investigation by the Tennessee Comptroller.
All right.
Can you, Mr. Chairman, can you just have, Director Boat, can you just sort of outline the decision-making process here? I want to make sure we're very well on the same page.
As the chairman pointed out, the statute provides, and like so many statutes, it's intertwined with other statutes. But if you have one of the 5 items that need to be discussed that are under TCA 93405, the main one being, or the main 2 being items deemed not subject to public inspection, that's public record stuff. And there are things that I think want to be discussed that are not subject to public records disclosure. And the second one, most importantly, current or pending litigation and pending legal controversies. The third being pending or ongoing audits or audit-related investigations. Those are all statutory, so the investigations that he has referenced are at the comptroller's office now, and the committee certainly has a right to have executive session to find out more what it's about, but it is covered and it is kept from the public for very good reasons. The Supreme Court held several years ago on public records that public records of any ongoing investigation and audit are not public records. And there's a good reason for that. That's so that the proper authorities can review them without it getting out, and then they would come up like the DA. Everything they do is with the sheriff and investigating people, and then when it's ready, they send out write out an indictment, and that's when it becomes public. So there's a lot of intertwining here, and obviously you can't say I'm going into executive session to discuss this, this, and this, because then it would breach the privacy and the confidentiality requirements. So it's a general statement of what is, as Zach has pointed out, items that are in the comptroller's office right now or under investigation with, like, the sheriff.
Thank you for that explanation. Mr. Chairman, that includes 2 reports to review under this, correct?
I believe that's accurate, yeah.
Okay. I'll make a motion to convene a non-public executive session as outlined by the law department.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
All opposed?
Are we doing that here, or are we going somewhere?
I believe
We generally go up to
Mayor's.
the mayor's conference room.
Okay.
Mayor's
And then, does this meeting stay open? And we
No.
come back, or do we adjourn this meeting and finish there?
This meeting.
Okay. Can I get a motion to?
And the only other question, I know there's not that many new people in here. There's some restrictions on what can we say, do, and how we have to,
I think you usually brief us up there as well, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.